So, hi everyone, and welcome back to the Purpose Pro podcast. This Purpose Pro podcast is all about talking about different aspects of mental health regarding high school students and being able to give out information that is easily accessible to everyone. So, my name is Anya Prosla, and I am a high schooler, and I want to transform our understanding of teenage mental health. So, today I'm here with Mr. Joe Elliott to discuss all the different factors that come to play when mentoring teenagers. So could you go ahead and give like an introduction?
Yeah, absolutely. Glad to be here. So, my name's Joe. I started an organization called the Catalyst Collective about 12 years ago. It was actually, a lot of people don't know this, but the concept was actually founded by teenagers. They just happened to need an adult in the room. And so we kind of built on it from there. But our mission is to raise up a movement of mentoring in America that can equip people to efficiently and effectively help the next generation find their unique design and purpose.
All right, so this might be an odd question to get to start off with, but what did you do before like starting Catalyst Collective?
Yeah, nothing like this. And that, I guess that's the beauty of this, right? You don't necessarily have to have a background in something to fix a problem in society, right? I graduated with a degree in management and marketing, which I had no clue what to do with besides go into technology sales. And so I went into technology sales and I did that for 9 years. But while I was doing that, I was also volunteering my time working with like local church youth groups and at-risk teens. And it was in my volunteer kind of time that I realized there's a massive need for something, in our country that isn't present. So
Mhm.
yeah, I mean, what I'm doing now has nothing to do really with management and marketing, other than it takes management and marketing skills to run anything, I guess.
Yeah. Okay, so could you tell us about how or like why you initially started Catalyst Collective?
Yeah, that's a good
Mhm.
question. I think this is if we rewind the clock to about 2011. This is right before cell phones like were in everybody's hands, and by everybody I mean like every teenager's hands, right? So we can look at the
Yeah.
charts, and we know there's a direct correlation to our social media usage and mental health issues. The charts just correlate with one another, and I was looking at it at the time, thinking, there's a lot that teens need, and there's just no outlet for it, right?
Mhm.
School is great, learning is great, but the things that you really need to learn as a teen aren't being taught in school anymore. So where are you gonna get guidance? How are you gonna figure out how you're uniquely designed, what you're gonna do, and where your value is in this world? And so what we're doing today was a culmination of an experiment that said, hey, what if we just talked to teens, figured out what they needed, and then started offering those opportunities outside of school? And honestly, that's how Catalyst got started.
Okay, wow. Okay, that was really interesting. But what makes your mentorship like services differ from all the others? Because I'm pretty sure that everyone has like the same motive, which is to help as many people as they can efficiently. So what makes Catalyst Collective different than all the others?
Yeah, so we do have a kind of a mentoring crisis in America, in that there really aren't very many mentors, and especially for teens. Nobody wants to mentor teenagers. And sorry, I don't know what's so scary about you guys. But, in general, I guess you could argue that you're probably one of the more ungrateful pockets of society. You're kind of you put on a hard outer shell. But no, but seriously, when you look at mentoring organizations across the U.S., doesn't matter what they are, volunteer, paid, um, they're having trouble finding mentors for two main reasons. One is the time commitment. Usually, when people think about mentoring, the programs are asking for somebody to, get involved for, you know, an hour or more every week for a year, right? Think about that. That's a big commitment, right? Even as a teenager, if somebody's like, Zanya, hey, I got this opportunity, but you're gonna have to commit an hour in a week for a year. You even as a teenager, you're going to have to be really seriously think about that.
Yeah.
Now imagine an adult who actually has something to give, and they're juggling, job, home, kids. Most adults two jobs. Like how, that's like might as well ask me to adopt somebody. That's how intense it feels, right?
Yeah.
And then it gets worse. So we not only ask for these long commitments, but then we say, hey, we're not going to really give you any training. So, sign up. And if you're willing to go meet with somebody, especially a youth, I don't know, go take them Starbucks or something like that. That'd be great. They just need an older brother or sister. That's not what they need. They never asked for that. And there's no training. So how am I supposed to gauge whether I'm winning? Right? That makes it a very, very difficult for anybody to want to say yes. So when we talk to teens, which is something most mentoring programs don't do, and we said, what do you need? It was really clear, right? They were struggling in three areas. I don't know who I am. I don't know why I'm here. I don't know where I fit in. It was identity, purpose, and belonging. And so we thought about it. And Zanya, you probably had a lot of great mentors come in and out of your life, right? People have dropped in and they've probably taught you how to take tests better. You probably had somebody teach you math, right? You probably had somebody
Mhm.
teach you about money or job skills, right? These people dropped into your life for a moment. They were a subject matter expert in something, and then they're gone, right? That's the idea of mentoring, right? It's not about trying to connect somebody with a lifelong brother or sister. And so what we said is like simply this. It's quality over quantity. It doesn't matter how many times you meet with a person, it matters what takes place in those sessions. And so the Purpose Project, after years of having conversations with teens, we recognized there were 6 key conversations that if these conversations were had, dude, a, a teenager had a radical shift in the way they thought about themselves and their future, right? It impacted what they were doing. And so we called those 6 conversations the Purpose Project, and we just began training people on those 6 conversations. And the results have, spoken for themselves. Teens who have these conversations, they go on to graduate, stay in school, explore their gifts and passions. They go on into leadership roles. They see improvements in their mental health, so forth and so on. So what makes us different is in one sense we could say it works.
Mhm.
We're training people to have intentional conversations. It only takes an hour a week for 6 weeks of your time, so it's easy to say yes to. We provide the best training in the United States, and once you experience it, most of our mentors come back to mentor again and again and again. And so to us, this form of targeted mentoring is really what we're missing in the United States. And if more organizations did this, we would have more mentors and we'd be solving more problems.
Yeah. Okay, I definitely agree. And so I was like going back to what you said before. Could you go in depth more about like the 6 conversations that you were like talking about?
Yeah, absolutely. So let's break the 6 conversations into 2 phases. First phase, first 3 conversations is all about diving into somebody's unique identity, right? And again, these are conversations that you should be having in middle school, high school, even college, but they're nowhere to be found, right? And so what we did was this. We poll 6 areas that make you you, right? We have conversations around your life experiences, your personality type, your values, your passions, your motivators, right? Um, and your skills, your talents. And so by deep diving into those 6 areas, now, Zanya, you're more complicated than 6 puzzle pieces, right? Uh,
Yeah.
but but these are the 6 most important things to pay attention to the most. And so we dive into them and and we start to put language around how you think and feel and what you're good at. You start to find things that words to describe yourself that you would have never used. Like you have aha moments, right? And by the third conversation, this is the coolest part. we do a process of thematic analysis. And honestly, this is a process that all of us have been doing since elementary school. You know, when like the teacher reads a story in class and says, "What's the main idea of the story?" And then we're like, don't steal or be kind to others. Dude,
Hmm.
that's thematic analysis, right? In college, in high school, we write papers on major and minor themes. But the simplicity of a thematic analysis is what's the main idea of the story. And so by looking at these 6 areas, we can drill to the core of somebody's themes, strengths, and even success factors, things that need to be in place to draw out the best of who they're wired to be. Now, I don't have a crystal ball, but this is the closest thing to having a crystal ball or reading somebody's palm, which I don't believe in. I think that's all garbage. But if it were real, like this is the closest thing to it, right? And so by the third session, think of that, by the third meeting, a mentor has given a mentee decades worth of self-awareness and an adrenaline shot of confidence, hope, and excitement about their future. And so that's just the first 3 conversations, right? So that's pretty cool. Last 3 conversations, really simple. Successful people do things that broke people don't do, right? They say
Yeah.
they have certain things that they do that draw out their talent, right? Because talent and potential is good, right? But potential is only a measure of what could be. It's not a guarantee of what will be, right? Most people will waste their potential. However, successful people, rich people, have found a way to not waste their potential. So the question is, what do they do that other people don't do? Well, that's the last 3 conversations of the Purpose Project. Here's what successful people do, and here's what you can do based on what you care about and you're interested in right now as a teenager. So that's it. Those are the 6 conversations. It's not rocket science, but they're all the conversations that are missing that are the most helpful in terms of helping somebody understand their identity, their purpose, and as a result, where they fit in.
Hmm. So how do these like 6 conversations like ultimately help mentors to help like struggling mentees?
Yeah. Well, if I'm understanding your question right, like how did these 6 conversations end up helping mentees? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, basically. Yeah.
Yeah. So, again, I think it's first of all, when you're young, and even adults struggle with this. There's a general sense of a lower sense of confidence that people have in themselves. And confidence comes from 2 areas. It comes from what you've experienced, and it comes from what's been spoken over you or to you, right? So if you come from a background where you just haven't done much that you're proud of, you haven't really achieved much, you haven't had many wins, and nobody's ever said, "Man, Zanya, you're so great at fill in the blank," right?
Hmm.
You haven't had those 2 things, by default, your confidence is lower. And it doesn't mean this you're less skilled. It just means that you have never been in a situation where the best of what's within you has been drawn out of you. And so here's another analogy, right? You know, you can be fit or healthy, but if you never go to the gym and work out, you won't be strong, right? Your muscles have the ability to be strong, but they won't be unless you exercise them. And for most people, especially youth, their muscles, their skills are dormant. They haven't exercised them. And these conversations start to show you what you need to work out, what you should be doing, right? Because I could say to you, even if you were never doing this podcast, Zanya, I could say to you, hey, it's clear you have a communication skill. That's a muscle within you. You may never do anything to develop it. You may just get good grades in speech and debate or whatever.
Hmm.
But if you did develop it, right, man, how much more powerful would your voice be, right? And so those are the kind of things that people need to hear and be kind of encouraged to do to develop what's within them. And that's how these conversations end up making a massive impact in people's life. It builds confidence where there is none, and it points them to experiences that they would never, you know, really take part in on their own.
All right, so for those who are listening in to the podcast right now, so Joe, what steps could they take to start discovering their unique purpose and identity and having these conversations?
Yeah, it's simple, right? Obviously, I'm going to tell you go to purposepro.org and I'm going to tell you to sign up for our purpose project, whether you're a youth, a young adult, or an adult. Um, we have we have taken, middle schoolers through this. We have taken very rich and successful people and even celebrities through this because everybody in life gets to a point where they're like, I'm not sure what I want to do. I'm not sure who I am. I'm not sure what I'm good at. Even if you've had success in something, we hit these walls and we're like, man, what am I doing with my life? This is for you, right? You need to do a deep dive and reset on who you've been made to be. And so purposepro.org, you sign up for the Purpose Project. Now, if you don't want to go down that route, right? I would say in general, you need to become an expert in you. And there are a lot of great personalities types out there. There's a lot of great tests. There's the Enneagram, there's a strength finders, there's a disc analysis, there's love languages, there's spiritual gifts. There's so many different ways to measure and understand ourselves in our society. You would be selling yourself short if you didn't invest in learning about you. And it sounds ridiculous, but again, if you want to know what rich and successful people do that other people don't do, they got a PhD in knowing themselves. And as a result, can put themselves in a place to succeed a lot faster than the rest of us can.
Okay, so what are some impacts that you've seen, like first, like the first, like seeing them like in front of you, seeing like the lives of those who were like mentored in Catalyst Collective and going through all these conversations and finding their identity. What are some of the impacts that you've seen from that?
Yeah, there's been a lot of cool stories over the years, honestly. I mean, there's people that have showed up. They were court mandated to come to one of our Purpose Project workshops. They didn't want to be there. Some of them had actually written a suicide letter, and it was like that. It was they were ready to punch out, and then they started to have these conversations, and it absolutely came at the right time and gave them hope where they had none. Right? We've seen young people who were like, man, dropped out in juvenile detention, felony charges, and then when you looked at their record, it was like, man, they had ADHD, they had bipolar disorder, they had not only were they struggling as a student, but they just physically weren't made to sit in a classroom 8 hours a day, and as a result, skipped, got into trouble, all this kind of stuff. And then we connected with them, started having these conversations, took them through the Purpose Project, and they were able to redirect their focus and energy. They were able to get back into school, find something to be a part of, find a group or a path that fit them, and hold a job and all these kind of things because they learned to harness the energy that's within them. At the same time, I've done this. It's cool doing these workshops with adults and seeing adults like, you know, literally change careers within a week, like quit their job and realize the aha moment was like, I knew this was within me all along. I've been stuffing it. I haven't been listening to it. Now I'm going to do it. Now I'm going to take a leap and just do it. And so, and that's kind of my story too. I mean, there was nothing in me that had training to run a nonprofit or a mentoring organization. I just saw a need. I knew who I was wired to be, and I knew what I didn't know I could figure out, but this was for me. I knew how to speak to youth. I knew how to speak to teens. I knew how to guide people. So I just doubled down on that without any experience. And here's where I'm at.
Okay, so having these type of teenagers, like you mentioned, that have came from either like a long line of getting in trouble or just like people that go through like tough obstacles in life, what are some challenges that like you have faced trying to reach out to these teenagers, especially when like trusting someone is extremely difficult during like their time?
That is a great question. And I'll tell you why. Like, because from an adult perspective, we hear about something like this Purpose Project thing, this mentoring we're doing, and we're like, oh my God, every teen needs this.
Mhm.
Yes, every teen needs it, but not every teen is ready for it. and it's really hard to get a team to buy in. And there's reasons for that. And so here are the reasons. Number one, as adults, we've got to look at the world from, Gen Z's point of view. And the reality is that you guys have grown up in a world where adults have continually let you down. Now, you might come from a household with great parents, awesome, but everything else tells you you can't trust teachers, right? They're like, the public schools are bad. Teachers are always in the news for sleeping with students or some kind of scam. The politicians are corrupt. The police abuse their powers, so forth and so on. Like anything that in this world that sets itself up as a form of authority is automatically kind of distrusted, from many youth's perspective. So why then would they be excited about meeting with a total stranger, a mentor, right? Why do I need that? And when you come from an environment where you've been continually let down by people, what's normally the reaction to that? The reaction to that is, man, I don't need anybody. I got this on my own. I'll figure out my own way, right? You do the opposite of what successful people do, which is ask for help. You say, I don't need help because I don't want to make myself vulnerable to be let down again. And so the idea of mentoring, asking for help, no way, right? No way. And so those are some serious obstacles. There's others because there is, as you've pointed out on other podcasts, social anxiety is a real thing. There's a lot of teens that really just have trouble with the social interaction. And this is a very scary thing to be,
Mhm.
to do one-on-one. I will say the thing that helps is that most of our mentoring connections are done remote, just like this podcast is remote. And a lot of teens really appreciate and love that. And so do the mentors. So, if you have a lot of trauma in your background, you really need counseling. Counseling has to come before really the mentoring because
Mhm.
you're not at a place where you're ready to work on you. And if you are at that place where you need help and you don't know how to ask for it, which is most teens, then it really takes some convincing, It's like we have to re-educate teens on what mentors are and what they do. And part of the problem is because mentors haven't been available for decades, it's right for Gen Z to be like, what exactly is a mentor and what do they do? Like, I understand it in theory, but I've never seen one, right? Yeah, that's right. You haven't, right? So there's a little bit of re-education that needs to happen on the value of a mentor and why you might want to say yes to this experience. It's challenging.
Mhm. Yeah, definitely. Okay, so going back to what you said a little earlier, you were talking about like since our world is like constantly changing and evolving, like you said, how are like Catalyst Collective and their mentoring techniques like are changing to match what teenagers are going through like now? Because what teenagers were going through like 20 years ago is probably way different than what we go through now.
Yeah, and it's not easy. It is definitely the hardest time to be a teenager, I think, in the last 100 years in America, because you're
Hmm.
just getting hit with so much. It's not just we can't just look at it and blame it on, oh, well, it's cell phones and social media that cause the mental health. No, it's more than that. I mean, you guys are a generation that's grown up knowing how to barricade a door in the event of an active shooter, right? You're a generation that has the easiest access to drugs that has ever been available to youth in America. You're a generation that has, constant opportunities and media right in front of you. And there's so much to stumble into, like, whether it's pornography, whether it's any sort of addictions, like it's real. It's a mess. There's so many different things that are there ready to take you out. So when I look at, well, what do we do? How can we help? What do we need to do differently for this generation? We have to be able to cut through the noise. We have to be willing to be a voice and speak in a way that you guys will listen. And I'll be honest with you. Our organization is still learning that. So here's one experiment that we're trying. We have created a social media channel called Experience Purpose. We just released it. And it's on Instagram. We may move it to TikTok as well, but it's led by teens. It's led by young men and women like yourself who are creating content and posting about how to find your purpose, the value of mentoring, how to be successful as a team. And what our hope is that the best voice to speak to your generation is you. And as a result, we'll start to tell people or show people what mentoring can do and have them opt into mentoring experiences. So that's brand new. We'll see if it works, but that's what we're trying anyway.
Yeah, that sounds really exciting. Okay, so from your perspective, why do you think there is such a large gap in mentorship in today's youth, and how can we address this issue? Like you were saying, now our generation is going through like all these like changes with social media, the active shooter example. So like, what is your perspective on that?
Well, yeah, I think first, there's two things that need to happen. First, we as an organization, we need support from, other investors and organizations to help us recruit mentors, right? So last fall we ran a small ad on Volunteer Match, and we got 750 mentor applications in like 3 months. We People want to mentor remotely. They love this model. We're figuring out how to scale. So we need to raise up more mentors, and we feel like we have the platform to do it. We just don't have enough of the financial backing and support just yet to get there. But once we do, then the second step is we need to go back to these institutions, schools, and say, hey, mentors are available. Because what's happened in our nation is that schools, juvenile justice institute, they've stopped mentoring altogether because they've given up trying to find mentors. And here we are as an organization saying, actually, we have more mentors than we have students because it's so hard to get a teacher to refer a student to a mentoring program and so hard to get a student to buy in. But what we know is this: once a student goes through it, once they have their first session, they love it, right?
Mhm.
It's just getting them to that. I don't know what a mentor is. I haven't heard about this. What's it going to do for me? To getting them to meet with a mentor. And once they do, it's awesome. So that's what we're trying to figure out. We need schools, and we need people that are working with youth to talk about mentoring, to refer students, and we need adults to step up and say, hey, I can learn how to have 6 conversations that'll be transformative. I'm in.
So, needing like all the support you can get either through like institutions or like whatnot. What can like parents do since parents are like the family support that each like teenager has? What can they do to like
Yeah.
help in the process?
Parents need to know these conversations for two reasons. One, these are conversations you will continually have with your kids, but they will also be conversations you will end up having in the workplace. I guarantee you. If you're leading people, if you work with people, if you have people that report to you, these are like adults. Here's the adult problem. Like attracting and retaining top talent, building a team and not turning people over. Well, these conversations help people want to stay in the workplace because they build a bond with their mentor or boss, right? And I would say if you're a parent, at least learn our framework, right? We have workshops that you can attend where you can learn this material and use it in every context, especially with your kids.
Okay, and I guess like to like continue on, where can you see like Catalyst Collective like growing for like the future generations?
Yeah, I think these 6 conversations are just the start, right? I think we need what we are looking at in our future. First and foremost, we want to train up an army of mentors all around the US and release them to mentor in their own context. But beyond that, we need to also train people on how to have targeted conversations around mental health, around how do I help somebody who's dealing with depression, anxiety, stuff like that. I mean, we all know somebody who's dealing with those things, And then we are like, I don't know what to do, man. You should go see a counselor.
Mhm.
Well, no, like we need to be equipped to know how to guide people. There aren't enough counselors on the planet to address everybody who's dealing with depression and anxiety.
Yeah.
So that cannot be our answer, right? Instead, we have to be willing to do trainings like this and say, I wonder if there are simple things that I can do that can help my friends who are dealing with anxiety, depression, so forth and so on, right? And that's where our organization is, I believe, going to grow to. We're going to help people become subject matter experts in a different pain point so that they can enter into somebody's life and make a radical difference in a short period of time.
So like kind of talking about like the future. So looking forward, what is your vision for Catalyst Collective and like the legacy you hope to leave for like the future generations?
Yeah, ultimately I want to live to see a generation that every young person has access to a mentor. And the opposite paradigm to be true, that a generation would be born where you at 16, 17, you're looking at your peers and you're like, dude, you don't have a mentor? Why don't you want a mentor? That's weird, right? And instead of it being weird the opposite way, like mentoring is just goes hand in hand with our culture and what we do, and people love it. And that's what I hope to see happen. That's a movement.
So lastly, is there any advice that you would like to give to like the listeners of this podcast about finding out who they are and finding their identity?
Yeah. Yeah, I'll say this. There's no way that you've tapped into the best of who you were born to be. There's just no way, right? And it is possible that the best parts of who you are still untapped. I want you to I need people to hear that and believe that, because even for me, I look at it the same way. And I say there's still parts of me that are too dormant, that if I tap into, can help me make a greater impact than I'm having today. And I think everybody needs to know that just because your past experiences have sucked doesn't mean your future experiences will. Like
Mhm.
you've got to do something different, and putting yourself in a position to learn about you and invest in you is the best thing that you can do for your future. So the best is yet to come.
All right. Thank you so much for hopping on call and doing this podcast. I really appreciate it.
Yeah. Thank you for doing what you're doing. Thank you for modeling what it looks like to get out there and take a talent, develop it, and have conversations that matter. Zanya, you're doing an amazing job. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you too for doing all this just for our generation to just like hang on in there. Yeah.
Absolutely.